Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are here to do my April wrap-up. So first, let's go over some stats. Here are some stats. I read 19 books in the month of April, which equaled out to reading 3,051 pages and listening to audiobooks for 31 hours and 55 minutes. And my average rating for the month was 3.8. There's some other stats on the graphic if you are very curious. If you've never seen one of my wrap-ups before, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through everything that I've read for vlogs on the channel during April, because these are books that I've already talked about, so I don't want to keep repeating myself. If you want to know my full thoughts, you can watch those vlogs. But I'm just going to go through them quickly and then we'll get to everything else. Also, because in April I was doing the Indie April Readathon, I want to do a little bit of a recap on that at the very end, see if I completed my bingo card and see if I completed my TBR that I set for myself for Indie April. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I had two vlogs that went up in April. That was me reading the Dollenganger series. So 3 of those books I read in March, and then the last 2, Seeds of Yesterday and Garden of Shadows, I did read in April. I'm not gonna talk really about them. It's the Flowers in the Attic series. I did not give a rating to any of the books, but those vlogs are up. If you want to see my full thoughts, they are very long because I do go into full spoilers and pretty much explain the entire plot. So if you've been curious about what happens in that book series but you don't want to read it for yourself, go and grab a snack and watch those videos. The next reading vlog that I uploaded in April was reading extreme horror for a week, and I read 4 books in this reading vlog. The first one that I read was The Scampering by Alana K. Drex and A.W. Mason. This is a short story extreme horror, and it has to do with squirrels. I did not give this one a rating, but it was definitely thoroughly entertaining. And if you are an Extreme Lover fan and you want something a little bit silly, this is 25 pages. You can pick it up on Kindle Unlimited, and I would recommend it. Next, I read Them by McKay Watson, which is like an apocalyptic extreme horror. I am not really sure how I feel about this book. I did not give it a rating. If you want to see my full thoughts, go watch the vlog. Then for that vlog, I read Death Freaks on Hell's Highway by Carl John Lee, which is about, it's kind of like a road trip extreme horror, sort of like a slasher type of vibe where we're just like following horrible people killing other people. I gave this one 3 stars. I gave this one 3 stars, which I feel like is a pretty standard rating when it comes to me reading extreme horror. And then the last one that I read for that video was actually my only 5-star in the month of April, and that was The Least of My Scars by Stephen Graham Jones. We know by now that I love Stephen Graham Jones. This was a very unique one. We are following a serial killer that is in a very unique situation where he has an employer that essentially provides him his victims, and so he gets to live out his serial killer dreams in relative safety because he's being protected by whoever his employer is. But I love the way that the story was told, and I love the way all of the pieces come together, and we are slowly getting more and more information about this person and the situation that's happening. And then I was definitely very shocked by the ending. So that was a 5-star, like I said. Also, in the month of April, I uploaded a reading vlog where I had an emoji generator choose the books that I read. This was to pick up some more indie titles and also allow myself to mood read a little bit. So I read 3 books in this video. Oh my god, I forgot what I was saying. I read Night Shoot by David Sodergren, which is a slasher that is about these people that are filming a horror movie, and they're very in this like isolated area. I gave this one 4 stars. I kind of love everything that David Sodergren writes. This one wasn't my absolute favorite by him, but I still really enjoyed it. Then the other 2 books that I had for that video were both 4.5 stars. The first one is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. I don't know how you say his last name. This one everybody's been talking about online. This is kind of like a sci-fi fantasy. It is very like heavy in like a video game language and reminiscent of a lot of video games, and we are basically following this man and his cat in The Dungeon, that is an alien reality TV show after the end of the world comes. This was extremely entertaining, very, very fun. I really, really loved following the characters. Like I said, I gave that one 4.5 stars, and then I read The Limits of My World by Gregory Coles, which I also gave 4.5 stars. This is like a space alien sci-fi book, but so much deeper than that. This talks about history, culture, language is a very, very heavy theme throughout the entire book, and we are following these characters as they are learning more about the history of their world, more about their universe, more about this alien species that they have come into contact with. It is very, very philosophical. It really gives you a lot to think about as far as like humanity and just the way the world works. I thought it was really fascinating, and I would not hesitate to recommend it to anybody. So those were all of the reading vlogs that I did for April. So once again, all of those videos will be linked in the description if you want to go and see my full thoughts on any of the books that I mentioned. So now we are moving on to everything else that I read in April, starting with The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, which is like a romantasy. I think this is a duology, or maybe it's a trilogy, but this is the first book, and this is one that is extremely popular. I don't know if I really have to explain the plot. Let me try to think. Like, I know what the plot is, but it's like taking it out of my brain and translating it into words that make sense is the difficult part. So we have our female main character in this book who is a human, and this is a fantasy world where there are vampires, and our main character has decided to enter these like trials. Essentially, there is like a competition that happens every so often, and a bunch of people enter it, and it's like run by this god, and the whole thing is, if you make it through and you are the survivor of this competition and of these trials, and then you are granted one wish, any wish that you want, by the god of this world, or one of the gods of the world. So our main character is hoping to enter it to win and become more powerful. She has a very unique relationship with her father, who is a vampire who rescued her from her like human life after her family perished. And of course, while she's in the trials, there is another vampire that she begins getting close with, and things do turn romantic there. Like I said, it is a romantasy, but I really enjoyed the story of this because I liked the romance. It was definitely like a slow burn romance. I feel like things don't really progress until you're pretty far into the book, and I did like that because we got to see the relationship slowly build, and then we got to see like her forming these friendships with all these other characters. You get to see a lot of focus on her relationship with her father, and then also the world itself, and her learning different things about the world that she didn't know, and learning different things about her father and the kingdom that she didn't know in the past, and then also developing, like I said, friendships, but also a romantic relationship. It does get a little bit steamy later on. Like, it's not like super spicy, but there is one specific scene in a cave which I was like, I'm sweating. Like, is it hot in here? I'm sweating. I need to go take a cold shower after reading this. But I really, really liked it. I liked seeing their relationship develop, and I'm really excited to continue in the series because I feel like the ending, I kind of predicted a little bit of what was going to happen or the way that things were going to go, but I'm very curious to see how it continues from there after everything that our main character has learned, and how that's going to be pretty life-altering for her. Next, I read a horror book called Daughter's Drawings. This is by Nick Botic or Nick Botic. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his name, but this is one that started on Reddit, which historically I have loved books that are translated from Reddit, no sleep or whatever, and then they get made into books. This one was just okay for me. I gave it 3 stars. We are following this man. We are following a family, really, where when they are on vacation, their car gets broken into, and they steal their young daughter's sketchbook. She really loves to draw, and somebody takes it, and then things escalate from there. They start getting her drawings in the mail, except whoever has taken them is now adding their own additions to the drawings, and then those things are kind of coming to life. Like, for example, they get one mailed back, and it's like a picture of a dog, and then all of a sudden this dog like appears in their yard, and different things like that. So it definitely is like creepy and tense and very suspenseful at points, but I just wasn't, I feel like, fully connected to the story in this one. I also wasn't totally sold on like the writing style, but I would still recommend it because it definitely has its creepy moments. I would say this would be a good book to like curl up in bed and like turn the lights out and read, because then I feel like that will freak you out a little bit more while the story is being told. Then I read We All Rot Eventually by Mia Ballard, which is a short little novella. To be honest, I don't remember a lot of the plot. I know we are just following this woman as she's becoming more and more unhinged, until at the very end things go kind of crazy. So our main character is someone who has moved to LA to become an actress, and she has this very, very strong desire to be famous, and that's kind of like how she views the world. She just really wants fame, and the whole message, as is in the title, is the idea that we all rot eventually. Nobody can sustain beauty and fame and wealth forever. And I just really like this because I feel like I just recently, before reading this, it wasn't that long since I watched the movie The Substance, and I feel like those two like go together very well. They are slightly different like in their own ways, but I feel like the messaging is kind of the same. So if you've watched The Substance recently and you really like that, then I would say pick up this novella because it might sort of remind you of that in a few ways. So I gave that book 3.5 stars. The next book I also gave 3.5 stars. This was The Grimmer by Nabin Ruthnum. I have read one book by this author called Helpmeet. It is a novella, and it is one of my favorite horror novellas. I think it is highly underrated. If you haven't read it, definitely put it on your TBR because it's fantastic. So I wanted to pick up something else by this author, and I decided to pick this one up. I got it on audio, and I didn't realize that it's young adult, but it's like totally fine. I just didn't realize before going into it, but this is a young adult book. We are following a main character who is in high school. He's a young boy, and he is kind of in a tough time in his life. His father is an addict, and he went away to rehab, and the whole family essentially had to leave with him to like be a support system. So they temporarily moved away from their home, and they live in a very small town, and they move, like I said, away so the father can go to rehab, and he is just kind of like doing his thing, and then they come back, and it's just kind of like the talk of the town. Like I said, it's a very small town, so everybody knows that that's why they left. And, you know, being a young child and being in high school, you have to deal, I'm sure, with a lot of gossip and a lot of bullying from that situation. It also doesn't help that his father is a doctor as well. He's a psychiatrist. So it's kind of like there's definitely a lot of rumors and a lot of gossip throughout the town about the psychiatrist that was an addict that had to go to rehab. So he kind of finds solace in one of his favorite bookstores in this town, and after moving back, after being away for a while, he goes there again, and he encounters a woman that he's never seen before, and he kind of gets wrapped up in the world of this woman and the bookshop owner, and it delves into the occult. There's a lot of like witchy things, there's a cat, there's a lot of like rituals and spells, and I thought it was a really, really entertaining book. I really enjoyed it. I liked the way that it tackled some of the tough issues that our main character is dealing with, not only with the situation with his father, but also being like one of the only people of color in this town, and especially being like the only student of color pretty much at his school. He really forms a bond with the bookshop owner, who is of the same race as him. So it's kind of about like finding friendship and finding your place and making up with his friends that he left behind, but it's also got all this occult horror going on in the background. So I think it was a really, really good balance of that, and definitely a really good young adult novel for anybody that is younger and looking to get into horror and maybe likes things that deal with the occult. There's also cats, and like I said, there's a bookstore setting, so it's kind of like a little bit cozy in that sense. I really enjoyed it. I don't read a lot of young adult though. It's not really my preferred like age range for reading, so I feel like when I read a young adult, I'm not usually gonna rate it very highly, but this one was enjoyable and I would recommend it. Next, for the month of April, I had one arc to read. This is an advanced copy that I got through NetGalley. This book is called Devouring Tomorrow, Fiction from the Future of Food, and this is a short story collection that really, the title says it all. It is discussing food, but also discussing the place of food in the future and just different scenarios that could change that, as far as like synthetic food, or there's a story about like lab grown celebrity meat. They talk of eating disorders. My favorite story in this collection was called Marianne is Not Hungry, and that did deal with eating disorders, but it also dealt with like relationships, not only relationship to food, but also relationship to people and love. There's also a story that takes place in the future where like there's not really any fruit grown anymore, and this community finds a tree that is bearing healthy fruit and what they are willing to do to take care for it, and then also the conversation around not really knowing how to take care of it because they've never really lived where they had to do that. So it was kind of talking about agriculture and the future of that. There are definitely some really interesting ideas presented in here. There were a few stories that stood out to me, but overall my average rating for this when I calculated it was a 3.1. But I would recommend it. It's kind of like light sci-fi, a little bit speculative, obviously leaning into dystopian territory. There are a few like post-apocalyptic stories in here, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked the idea of it and the discussions that could be had about, like I said, the future of food, and I would recommend this one. Okay, this is the last one I have for my like fiction category. I read Sky Daddy by Kate Folk, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This is about a woman, her name is Linda, and her big dream in life, or what she feels is her destiny, is to die inside of a plane. She has always had an attraction to planes and views them as being sentient beings that have feelings and thoughts, and she feels that when she gets on a plane, that plane is going to feel so attracted to her, so connected to her when she meets her soulmate plane, that he is going to be overcome with passion and desire, and he is going to crash himself in order to kill her and like keep her inside forever, and that's going to be like their marriage, and that just is what she feels is her destiny. So we are following her through her adult life, and she is working at like this media company, not a media company, but like they call it virtual hygiene. So she is somebody that like the reports on social media sites and apps go through her, and she has to like review them and say whether they can stay or whether they have to get removed based off of the community guidelines. So that's her job there. She has an interesting family relationship. She has an interesting home life. She is renting the garage from a different family, and the reason she does that is because she doesn't want an apartment with windows, because she feels like then she'll be constantly staring at the sky and looking at the planes, and she has to have some restraint. And her obsession with these planes goes very, very far. And this was just a really fun book to follow her around. It's funny because she's not, like, she's definitely has her flaws. She gave me a lot of secondhand embarrassment. It made me cringe a lot at different points. Did not always make very smart decisions, and obviously is a little bit, maybe something's a little bit off there with her attraction to planes. But she's such a fun character to follow that you are, despite all of that, you are rooting for her throughout the story. And I just really liked following it. It's about, of course, like her obsession with the planes, her attraction to the planes, but it's also just about navigating life, finding your place in the world, finding friendships, finding a spot where you belong despite your flaws and despite the undesirable parts of you, to know that you can still be loved and you can still fit in with people. I just really like the story. I love the writing. I think Kate Folk did a fantastic job of like developing the character in here, and like I said, really making her relatable, even though a lot of the stuff that she talks about is extremely unrelatable to the general public. You are still rooting for her, and you want like you want her to succeed. with what she's doing. Moving on, I had 4 nonfiction books that I read. All of these books I did not give a rating to, and I'm just going to go through them very quickly. The first one is Bear, Lion, or Wolf: How Understanding Your Sleep Type Could Change Your Life by Olivia Arezolo. I don't know if that's how you say it. The author is somebody who works kind of like sleep therapy. Like, she works with people to fix their sleeping habits and figure out what their sleep chronotype is, and she kind of goes through each of these chronotypes in the book, Bear, Lion, or Wolf. She gives you, like, it's kind of like a little quiz that she gives you to figure out what your chronotype is, and then she makes specific recommendations for how to improve your life and your sleeping habits with the chronotype that you are. Really, I only picked this up because I had a free audiobook credit to use from a free trial from some app, and this is one of the nonfictions that sounded interesting to me and I couldn't get elsewhere, so I decided to pick it up. To be honest, I don't think it really applied to me because I feel like I don't have a lot of issues with my sleeping habits, my sleeping patterns. I feel like I do pretty good on my own, but it was interesting to learn about the different chronotypes. But aside from that, this book doesn't go really fully in depth. So I would say if you are somebody who is really struggling, I don't know if this is the most beneficial title to pick up. It might give you a little bit of surface information, but if you are looking for something that goes a lot more in depth into how you can actually fix your sleeping patterns, I don't think this is it. Then I read 2 Dolores Cannon books, which, if you guys don't know who Dolores Cannon is, she was a very popular hypnotherapist through the 60s all the way up through like the 90s until her death in, I think, 2014. But she specializes in past life regression, and she has written a lot of books. So I picked up 2 of hers this month. I picked up Between Death and Life, Conversations with a Spirit, and then The 3 Waves of Volunteers and The New Earth. So these both went into different things, but the way that Dolores Cannon's books work is she kind of compiles throughout the years of doing hypnotherapy and doing her research. She takes certain sessions with people and compiles everything that's sort of talking about the same topic and then puts it into the book. So I listened to these on audio, and I think that's definitely the way to do it in the future when I listen to her books, because I have physically read from her as well. But I think it just seamlessly goes, because it's just like a conversation. Like, it's her talking to this person that is under, like, in trance or whatever, and then them answering, and it's just kind of a conversation. So I feel like it translated very well to audio. I just think her work is very, very interesting. It's definitely metaphysical. Not everybody can get on that train, but it's something that I enjoy, and I really like her stuff. And then I also read one from her daughter called Soul Speak, and this is her daughter Julia Cannon, who was a nurse for a long time before she kind of got into some of the same hypnotherapy stuff that her mother does. And in this book, she is talking a lot about your body and how your body communicates with you and how you can communicate with your body. And she's just kind of giving you a few ideas of, like, oh, if this is happening, it might be an indication of this. And she doesn't go like super in depth. It's not meant to be like a manual or like the Bible to this stuff. It's just kind of a discussion of it. So like I said, I did not rate any of those nonfiction books, but that is everything that I read in the month of April. So like I said, I want to do sort of a little indie April check-in at the end here. So let me pull up the bingo board. So I do believe I completed all of the bingo prompts. So the first one, to read from an author you have enjoyed before, I definitely did that. My goal was to read from David Sodergren at least once this month, and I did. Post your TBR on social media, I did. I posted a YouTube video going over my April TBR. Read a book with less than 500 ratings, I did. The Limits of My World had less than 500 ratings, and I think there was probably a couple other ones. I think, does The Grimmer have less than 500? Possibly. Pick a book based on the cover. Oh, did I forget to do this? I did. Any of these, did I pick them off the cover? I think Death Freaks on Hell's Highway I kind of picked off the cover. because I remember I wanted to read something from Carl John Lee. I wasn't sure which one I wanted to read, and I knew I liked the cover of that one, and I'm pretty sure that's what I said when I was picking it in the video. So does that count? I'm gonna say it counts. It's my readathon. I could say it counts. Read a diverse book. This one I assume that I have completed, but I'm not 100% sure because I had a book selected and a backup book selected for this prompt, and then I went to pick them up on Kindle Unlimited, and I don't understand why, but I could not. They're available on Kindle Unlimited, but they were only available for select devices. So on my actual Kindle, I couldn't read the Kindle Unlimited book, which didn't make any sense to me. I could have picked it up on my cell phone and read it, but I don't feel like doing that anymore. I used to do that a lot before I got the Kindle, but now I'm like, if I have a Kindle, why would I read on my phone? I think I did read one though. I'm thinking The Grimmer by Naman Ruthnam. That's an author of color, so I think that would count for a diverse book. I'm sure there are other ones that I read that could fit into this category, but that's what I'm gonna go with just so I can check it off. Share a review online. I did. I try to leave Goodreads reviews for every single book that I've read. I've also, I know, posted on Instagram a few of the books that I've read. Read a book outside of your comfort zone. I did with Dungeon Crawler Carl, because sci-fi, fantasy, like video game type stuff isn't always what I read, but now that I've read that and really enjoyed it, I think it might be something that I need to explore a little bit more, like sci-fi, fantasy, adventure type books. Read Outdoors in Celebration of Earth Day. I did. I read on the beach, and then I also read outdoors when we were camping this month. Read from a new to you author. I definitely checked off because most of these authors I have not read from before. The Scampering, Them, The Limits of My World, The Serpent and the Wings of Night, Daughter's Drawings, We All Rot Eventually, Devouring Tomorrow, Bear, Lion or Wolf, and Soul Speak. Those were all books from authors that I've never read from before, so I definitely checked that off. Now, as far as what I officially posted on Instagram for my Indie April TBR, I know I uploaded my video on YouTube, but I wanted to fill out the little card and post that on my story. This is what I posted. So of this, I've read 3 of them. Fluids is the one that I had slotted for the diverse book pick, but I couldn't read that on my Kindle, as I said, so unfortunately I didn't check that one off. Professor Everywhere by Nicholas Binge, unfortunately I did not get to either. I do want to read that one. Nicholas Binge is the author of Ascension, which I really enjoyed, and this one is on Kindle Unlimited, so I will be picking that up. And then the other one that I didn't read was Shy Girl by Mia Ballard. I think the main reason I didn't read this one is because I would have had to bought it on Kindle, which is fine, but I just had other things that I was more interested in reading when the time came instead of purchasing something to read, if that makes sense. And then I also, like, my goal was to read something by Mia Ballard in April, and I did that. I read her novella. So I do want to read Shy Girl. Like, that is pretty high priority on my TBR right now because I've heard so many good things about it. It just didn't happen in April. So as far as the official TBR that I posted on Instagram, I only read 3 of those books, but I completed my bingo board, so that's pretty good. There were a few books that I read that were not indie published. So obviously the arc that I read, Devouring Tomorrow, was not indie published, and neither was Sky Daddy. Bear, Lion or Wolf, I don't think was indie published, but like I said, I wanted to use up my audiobook credit, so of course I was gonna pick that up. The Grimmer, I'm not 100% sure if that's indie published or not. And then obviously like the VC Andrews ones that I read were not indie published, but I think everything else was. Some of them were a little bit, like Dungeon Crawler Carl and The Serpent and the Wings of Night, I think were originally indie published and then recently got republished traditionally. So I don't know necessarily if that counts. I feel like it does count, and I was just using it as an excuse because I wanted to read those very popular books. So I think that's it. That is everything that I read in April, my little Indie April wrap up, some stats. So let me know down below what your favorite book from the month of April was, and if you participated in the Indie April readathon, recommend me your favorite indie book that you read. But with all of that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you next time.